Thank you, Brent, or Dean Iverson, thank you very much for those remarks and that intro. I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and use the mic just because I think that's helpful for folks in back. I have a very difficult time standing in one place, so I'm going to be moving around a little bit, but I won't attack you, I promise. So you got kind of a, Brent, Dean Iverson did a really nice job of kind of giving you a pretty good sense of where I come from, so I'm not going to do too much of that. I am, as he said, in the Department of Special Education in the College of Education here, and been here for 26 years, but most of it, all the entire time I've been adjunct for, well, a number of reasons, but I call this home. So I hope you didn't come looking for the black James Patton, because he's not coming. But I just thought I'd let you know. Actually, it's a really good friend of mine. He has the same name, and people get us mixed up until we're together. The topic today, and I know when I was approached to ask to be part of this wonderful series that goes on in the fall and in the spring, I was asked to kind of do it based on the signature class that I do teach. I teach a UGS 302 class in the fall called, oddly enough, Disability in the Media. And so this is kind of an amalgam, and in 1 hour I'm going to try to do 28 weeks, although I'm not really going to try to do that with you. But that's kind of what we do. So here's what I'm planning on doing. And I apologize, I go to these series, these presentations as often as I can, and there's just amazing folks here on campus that get to present and that are chosen to do it. So I'm very honored, and thank you so much for considering me. I also realize that you probably don't need to see more PowerPoint slides. You probably saw enough today. But this is a topic that I really need to use visuals with in a lot of ways. I can talk about it, but it just doesn't come across. So I've tried to cut back on words, but there are a lot of visuals I'm going to try to give you. But this is what I'm going to do. This is my attempt here. Is just a real quick background, which you don't need. You've already got that, I think, from Dr. Dean Iverson. I'll get into some what I call foundations, and you'll see where there's just some basic information I want to share. Then we'll get into some perceptions of disability, and then what 4 and 5 is where I really want to get to and spend my time. And that's really looking at disability in the media. And under 5, I've chosen what I call a couple contemporary examples. There are a whole bunch of them I wish I could talk to you about, because there's some other ones I'm leaving off that I think are really powerful. One of the ones on my mind right now, which I'm not going to talk about, is the way wounded warriors, which is a more contemporary term, have been depicted in the media over different wars. Those of us, this will date me, but I was drafted and was in the Army during Vietnam. We were not treated the way folks are now when people came back. It's very interesting how, and I'm talking about soldiers in general, but wounded warriors in particular, very different. It's a very interesting thing to see how things have changed. Now, and I don't mean this in any negative way, you get to board the plane first. Back in my time in Vietnam days, people would actually spit at us because we were in the military. Kind of a very different kind of feel, and it's kind of interesting to see how the media captured that. That's not a topic I'm talking about. I guess I just did talk about it, but I'm not going to go into it much deal. There's so many interesting things. Okay, so my goal here is really twofold tonight, and it's really the first one is the bigger one, and that is to get you maybe hopefully thinking about some things that maybe you haven't thought about. Some of you, I'm sure, probably have. I see some faces of people I know, and I know that those folks have thought about some of these things. But hopefully I'm going to do a couple new things that I haven't messed with too much either. So that was for me to have some fun preparing. And I want to also point out that this topic, media and disability, it's such a cross-disciplinary topic. I'm going to talk on, I really am going to be an imposter at times, because I'm going to talk about, I'm not in journalism, I'm not in marketing, I'm not in radio, television, and film, meaning that, but yet I'm going to talk about some of those things. But I will definitely, there's a basketball term, don't dribble, don't go to your left. And it just means stay with what you know. So I'm going to kind of stay where I'm comfortable, but I will be treading in some other areas where other people are very good. All right, so here's number 1. So quick sense, just as Dean Iverson said, my background is basically, before I got into higher education, went back for my doctorate, I really was a special ed teacher, special education teacher for many years, in different types of contexts and scenarios. And so I just kind of put all those photos up there. In recent times, as Dean Iverson said, I've been involved here for the last 9 years with the organization called Best Buddies, which I feel very deeply, and it's a very important one to me. I also started teaching, I should be doing it this spring, but I've just got too much on the plate. I also teach in informal classes. If you haven't looked, informal classes now offers a strand of courses for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's fascinating, it's really amazing. We kind of do what we call reverse inclusion, where we actually have UT students, typical UT students, in these classes with these adults. This is the class I taught last spring. It was called, I took some license, creative photography. I'm not sure I'm that creative, but I call it that. Okay, so just to give you a little sense of my background, and that's a lot of words, is that what that list does give you a sense of, and some of those might need definition. These are the populations that I've spent time, and I hate to say it, but the last, I guess, 43 or 44 years working with these groups. So that's, and I've been interested in this topic, but in recent days, it's gotten more important to me. As Dean Iverson mentioned, since 2003, I have been working in death penalty cases in the United States. Now, in 2002, there was a Supreme Court decision that actually, the Supreme Court decided that you could no longer execute individuals with intellectual disabilities. That created a market for some experts, which I never planned on being, who had background in that area, who would then be involved with the forensic world. So that's kind of what happened. It's that area more than anything else that's caused me to get very interested in how media shapes our thinking. And the reason for that is that I just don't think people understand what intellectual disabilities is. And if we can't define that well in the courts, there's people being executed when it's not understood. Now that is a topic I'm going to come back to and spend a little bit more time on. That happens to be, those are not great photos, but that's, truthfully, I'm not supposed to probably be taking those photos. Those are photos of the Polunsky unit, which is where death row is in Texas, over in Livingston, Texas, if you've ever been over that way. If you don't know it, in Texas we execute in Huntsville, but death row is in Livingston. Okay. All right, a couple caveats and then let's roll. I do not have a disability, or at least not one that's been diagnosed. And so that's important to come out of the block and say it. So, second, I don't speak for all folks with disabilities. I think that's an important thing. Everybody has their own opinion. There's different ones. I should have already kind of addressed it. I'm not an expert on journalism, et cetera, et cetera. There are other folks on campus that are really talented and their backgrounds are great. But I have been around these populations, many different ones for a long time now, and have been thinking about things. And I love to watch. I like to watch television, which nobody watches anymore in this room, or whatever the streaming services that you use, or movies, or whatever. All of those things are important. And as you will see, but media goes beyond those. All right, so I'm in foundations. Here's what I'd like for you to do, okay? Now, you can do it. I hope that you're not, well, some of you are taking notes. That's really nice. So visualize this, okay? Just for a second. I would like for you to draw me a picture of a pirate, okay? Now you don't have to draw it, although I'm watching. But visualize how you would draw that pirate, okay? I actually do this activity in one of my classes, and pretty much set it up just the way I just did, with almost no setup, okay? I didn't tell you to draw a whole body, or just a face, or whatever. You can do whatever you want. Okay, but you got your drawing visualized, okay? All right. I'll tell you what typically happens, is we get what I call the trifecta. Now, I don't know how many, if you in your drawing, how this would work out, but usually we got what I call the pirate trifecta. The eye patch, some type of hook, or something going on, and a peg leg, okay? So that's the trifecta. Now, how do we get that? Well, yeah, Disney. Disney did a little bit of some work on us, right? Disney gave us the hook. Treasure Island gave us the leg. Although actually, Long John Silver often had a crutch. He actually didn't have the leg in a lot of situations. Anyway, we got that from there. The eye patch, I have no idea where that came from, but there's actually an interesting explanation for it that I'm not sure I'm buying yet, where pirates had that on. Their eye was still good. It's because they had to go below in the darkness and come out in the sun, and somehow that was supposed to be helpful. I don't know. Okay, but anyway, we got it. Here's what I do in my class. I ask the question I just asked you, and then I collect the samples, and then we analyze them. So here's the deal. I've got two classes. One is a couple years ago, and the one with 83 is just last week, okay? So there's a large class, well, fairly large, larger classes. All right, so just think about it. What percentage do you think in those drawings had an eye patch? All right, 89 or 75. I mean, almost everybody's given that eye patch thing, okay? So if we do the peg leg, it drops a little bit, 46 and 28. Really, actually, I don't know what's happening here. Maybe they're just not thinking about it anymore. And then for the hook, it's gone up. So my most recent group, over half of them are putting the hook on there. Now, there's a couple of reasons I do that. I'll get to it in a second. You know what a real pirate looks like, right? Or I should ask you, did anybody, when they asked you to do that, did any of you visualize Jack Sparrow? Okay, good. That's good. That's good. I have a couple folks who do that, and they try to draw that. It's never turned out real well, but it goes. But here's a real pirate. Now, those cannonballs, they can't hurt you. So there were some pirates that had some physical stuff going on. Not too many, probably, with peg legs. Anyway, that's Black Bellamy. You can check him out. That's a real pirate. And the only reason I'm putting him up, that's not the one. I actually had to interview. One of the death penalty cases I worked was a Somali pirate case. So I've interviewed, not that guy, but somebody who looked like him, and he was a pirate. That's how everybody referred to him. So that's a pirate. That's a contemporary pirate in terms of how we use that term. So I'm concerned for those pirates and how they may feel. I'm concerned for individuals who have certain types of disabilities and how they may react. But what I'm interested in is how kids who see pirates conveyed in children's literature, as one example, as a pirate that has all these disabilities and usually is an antagonist, not a protagonist. Usually is more of an evil character. What do they take away from that? Okay. I promise that's something that you would do in a class. I am not going to get into it. There's different models of disability, and I think it's important to understand them. In the class, if we had more time, or if we ever wanted to, we could talk about it. The model that dominates in the media, in a way, is the biomedical model. It's a defect, disability-oriented model, and that's the one that tends to take over. And I think it's important to recognize that. There's other models of disability that I think are really important ones to understand, but that's not my purpose here today. There's this topic called ableism, compared to racism, ageism, sexism, leaving out some isms, but it's the same kind of thing. You would just substitute some of the wording in here. But basically it's assumptions and practices that promote the differential and unequal treatment of people because the parent are assumed. It's the assumption thing that gets to be a problem sometimes. And it leads to the stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. So those are all things I think everybody's been pretty much aware of. I'm interested in it as it applies to disability, as other folks in disability studies area. And I will also take a step back and say there's people who are their credentials are far stronger than mine in the disability studies area. I kind of sneak in the back door because I'm interested in the media part. But these are the three things I'm concerned about. And I'll show you how they play out in just a few minutes. I'm concerned about misinformation. That means bad, just inaccurate information that people get. I'm concerned about that as it relates to disability. I'm interested in misinterpreted information. That means that what's being conveyed isn't wrong, but if you just focus on that, you're going to get the wrong message. And as I said, I'll show you some examples. And the last one is lack of information. That's just where people don't have any information. And I want to give them accurate information. Let's see that is my mission. All right, so let's talk about disability for a second. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but that's my list. That's what I'm working from. What you will find in the media, in terms of disability, for the most part, it's physical. Most of the images in the media are going to be more physical disability, because they're visible. As a matter of fact, what does someone with learning disabilities look like on Well, they don't look any different than anybody else. But somebody with a physical disability stands out. It makes some sense, but that's clearly it skews up that way. The second group that gets covered is psychological. I'm using the term psychological, but we're talking about folks with mental health challenges. Now, they're disguised sometimes, but they're there. Just as a sidebar, Dean Iverson referred to my wife, and I'll just come out and tell you, I'll share some personal things here once in a while. I cannot, just because of the work I do, for a lot of reasons, I cannot watch the show Criminal Minds for a number of reasons. My wife loves it. And so I said, why are you watching that? She said, I like it. I just leave the room. She's got the TV, so she goes. Vision and hearing, I just want to point out, if you didn't know this, many of you, you guys are one of the best universities in the country, so I know you know this. But folks in the big deaf community, they don't see it as a disability, folks. They don't look at it. The term we actually use in education, we refer to folks with hearing differences, I'll just use that term. We use the term hearing impairment, and people who are deaf, and particularly the deaf culture, they hate that term. And I think with good reason. When folks who are deaf say, we don't have a disability, you just don't know my language. Think about it. I think that's true. And there's a culture that goes with that as well that sometimes we don't understand. So I, with reluctance, I even put it up there, okay? But there are movies like Children of a Lesser God and other ones that have had main characters who are deaf, and maybe it's worth looking at and how they're portrayed, but I'm taking it off the list of disability. The other ones I think are pretty straightforward. I will tell you though that my strong suit, my dribbling to the right, where I'm comfortable, I've worked with folks in all of those areas, but the one that I've had the most work with and the most concern about media portrayal is clearly intellectual disabilities, and I'll get to that. Okay. I don't expect that you know Karen Gaffney, but Karen has a condition called Down syndrome. You might have known that. What's interesting about Karen, people will say, okay, yeah, those are nice glasses, and she's got a nice haircut and everything. She has Down syndrome, so she must have some limitations. Karen Gaffney doesn't have intellectual disabilities. She's actually gotten a degree from, at least the last time I heard, an associate's degree, not a different, just a regular associate's degree from a community college. She gives more speeches than certainly I do, probably not as many as Dean Iverson, but I'll tell you what, she's interesting. But we jump to conclusions. This is Millie Rogers, I think, yes. Millie is a friend of mine when I lived in Hawaii. I haven't seen her much lately, so I don't have a whole lot of update for you. Millie, this is it's a video, so I just did a screenshot of that. Millie has a condition called cerebral palsy. And I'm using her, it's not a media thing so much, but I want to convey something to you. Millie has cerebral palsy. She's in my room talking to a group like this, and you'll notice she's hanging on almost for dear life to that table that's right next to her. Millie, if you were around her, you would not understand her. It would take her a long time to walk from wherever disabled transportation dropped her off to this room. And when she got in here, she would need a certain kind of chair to sit in. One with arms, for instance. I'm not sure I had the best chair for her. The thing is, when people see her, they think, and she spent most of her elementary life in a separate school with kids with really low functioning abilities. Millie has a master's degree in social work. She should have been in a regular school from day one. So we have these misconceptions sometimes about people, and we jump to conclusions. Okay. This is not an exhaustive list, but what I like to do is, at least as I look at media, I like to look at all these different areas in terms of how disability is portrayed. I will just say right offhand, I'll tell you in general, advertising has been usually good. There's been some bad examples. I'm going to show you one. But there's been some good ones in advertising. Movies, depends. Television, depends. But the other area is the creative arts. That's usually been a pretty good area. Although I can show you a list of songs that we've identified that have lyrics dealing with disability. Some of them aren't so good. You all might know the group Black Eyed Peas. You might know, if you know them at all, you might remember the song they did. It's probably been out now a few years. Let's get party started. That isn't the real name of it. The real name of it, the original name was Let's Get Retarded. They ended up changing the name of the song. So there's actually some interesting things, just even in lyrics, lyric titles and song and messages in songs. But in general, I think the creative arts are pretty good. Now, so what I'm going to do though is I'm going to show you a couple examples of some good and some bad. And then I want to get into what I consider, I better watch my watch, I've chosen 4 contemporary examples that I want to spend a little time on. So I'm kind of pretty much where I want to be. Okay, so here we go. If you have never seen the term tropes, it's used sometimes in this field to kind of refer to recurring images or representations. And I'm really interested in terms of how that happens within different forms of media, as in terms of how disability is portrayed. And so I probably won't use the word, but I thought I'd introduce it to you if you've never seen it before. Okay, so I wanted to show you though, to give you a little feel. Over time, in conjunction with actually students in my class, for that matter. I mean, this is really, it started, I'll show you where it started. This first thing is from Steve Safran, but I've also done another one that came from someone else. But basically, it's students in the class that have kind of developed this into our existing tool, or tools. So I call this one kind of character development analysis. So I'm going to show you kind of what we look at. This is a tool that we use to look at media when there's an opportunity to develop the character, okay? You can't develop a character in a 30-second ad, okay? I probably have that now. You need, a television show, a movie maybe in an hour or 2 hours that you have, but you can get a character development. You've got to have time to see the character over time. So that's what this tool is about. So I've given you a couple examples where we've applied this. And so this is what it looks like. And I want to always start out, well, I hope I've done this way. I always like to start out with a positive. So characters in movies. And think of a movie that has a character with a disability. Can you think of one? As a matter of fact, if you really are interested, I don't know if you're interested, but it's amazing how many movies have won Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, and one of the main characters has a disability. It's pretty amazing, actually, if you go back over time. So here's the point of this is that this is how we want, I think this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a characterization of somebody with a disability that maybe they don't mean all of them, but it's basically, if you look at that, it's a person like you and me. It's just someone else. Part of the mainstream, interacts as an equal, has a complex personality. In a lot of films and television, that's not necessarily the case. I am pretty happy with the fact that I think we got a lot more positive portrayals now than we used to. There's still a big issue that I'm not going to address with you tonight, and I just didn't want to get into it. It's not so much about media. It's the issue, though, is casting actors with disabilities for roles of someone with a disability. Did I say that right? Meaning that you've got a character in a TV show. Let's take Glee, for instance. Y'all remember Glee? Remember Artie? Okay, Artie was in that, and I guess he could sing. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. I don't know, I could be dubbed in for all I know. But Artie did not have a physical disability. He was an actor portraying. Now one could argue, isn't that the essence of acting? I'm going to give you that a little bit, but I'm also saying there's actors with disability who haven't been employed. I just think, give them a shot, give them a try. All right, I'm going to step back. That's not what I'm into. Okay, but there is that part. But this is what we're trying to get at, is a complex person, kind of regular kind of thing. Here are the negative ones. These are the ones that you will see as dangerous or criminal. Criminal minds right there, boom. Everyone, well, I had to watch the show. But all the folks in that show, they have some kind of probably mental health issue, if not some other things. I don't know. Okay. These are the things that we're kind of trying to work and trying to make sure that we have less examples of these. Hopefully wipe it out. The one on that list that stands out the most, the one that you'll see if you really look at various representations in the media, is the first one. Pitiable, pathetic. That's one that has dominated over the years. And I'll give you an example. I sometimes come up with this and realize maybe you never saw this, but not too long ago there was a show on television called Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Do you remember that? Okay. Now if you've never seen it, you'll have to just go with me here for a second. But what they would do is they would identify a family that really did have some challenges going on, I'll say that. Many of those families they often had a member of the family with a disability. And the show would proceed. And what would happen is the family would be sent to Orlando or somewhere, I don't know. And then they'd go in and make over the house, and the family would come back, and everybody in the neighborhood would be there and yelling and screaming, and they'd go in and then see this redone house. Now, that's so nice that all these people put in time and rehabilitated it. But what is it really playing upon? It's pity, down deep. And what you never remember is that some of those houses they rehabbed, you know what it costs to maintain those houses? We have another tool we use for photographs. Let me show you. For advertising, photographs, posters, billboards are something you would look at and you can't get any character development out of it. You would look at it and have to, it would have some kind of impression. So we've developed an instrument that comes off this work that Thompson did, where she identified wondrous, sentimental, exotic, realistic. My class has added some other ones to it. So we kind of use this kind of criteria to look at those kinds of things, to see how they're portrayed. And not all of them are bad. Ominous isn't always bad. Sometimes it is, but it's not necessarily bad. Remember, this is about disability portrayal. I'm very concerned I'll just get there. You'll see what I'm concerned. All right, so let's do this. Now it's time to, I want to show you a couple things, and let's hope it's still hooked up and working right. I just picked some things that I just think are just really great examples. You all watch American Horror Story, right? And there's there's an actress in there who has Down syndrome that's been in many of the seasons of that. That's just great. If you've never watched Parenthood, that was a wonderful show, and it realistically took on the issues related to Asperger's at the high end of the autism spectrum. It really was. I would just put that out there as one of the better ones. And now, what's on television, I'm assuming you can get it in a streaming way too, is a show called Speechless. I just think these are just highly positive. I recommend those kinds of things. Okay, I want to see what you know. The BBC, I should have told you what year this was. It was a couple years ago. The BBC did on a website poll, which meant you had to have access to the internet and then respond, did a poll of the greatest disabled TV character. Now I know you're going to say, well, I don't watch British TV, but they were looking at American TV as well. And the winner was somebody from the US. Who do you think it was? I may not have given you enough background. Timmy from South Park was identified as the greatest disabled character on US TV. Now, when I first, y'all have seen, you kind of know what South Park is? South Park is like Curb Your Enthusiasm, Family Guy. They attack everybody. I'm not sure I like it, but at least they haven't singled one group out. They kind of go at everyone. South Park, when I first saw this, when I first was introduced to Timmy, I'm thinking, oh no, this is not going to be good. But when you actually look at it, he's treated as like anybody else on that show. He's just one of the characters. I mean, let's not apply my criteria on him yet, but I think I'm okay with this. Now, his sidekick is named as Jimmy, that was my favorite. Okay, but, all right. I think I'll just, here's some other ones. These are some movies I just want to mention to you that You know, if you haven't seen The King's Speech, I think that's the kind of movie that really does a pretty good job of portraying disability. In this case, it was a fluency disorder. This is more of a documentary for once in my life. It's about the Goodwill Band of Miami Beach. Just fascinating, goes into the lives of these people who have real significant disability, but they're amazing musicians. I've actually used that in a death penalty case, that movie. And then if this is an old movie, maybe I'm showing it because Mary Tyler Moore just passed away, but I think she's received the Academy Award for her role in this. This was about a family going through great crisis. It was real. You don't come out of here happy, but you get a sense of reality of when families go through crisis. And I just think it portrayed mental health issues in the way it is, in the way it can be. So that's kind of it. I'm excited about the number of models now in fashion with disabilities that are now, and we're not talking about the benefit, the fundraising benefit, across the street here. I just made that up, I don't know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, we're talking about New York runways, high fashion, and these models, this is a woman with Down syndrome that's been taken over a storm up in New York. This person is from Australia. She was elected to the city council in one of the cities. Man, that's just so cool. And the way she's been covered has been good too. Okay, now it's time to, let's keep your fingers crossed. I'm going to try to show you a couple things. Some of you probably watched the Super Bowl. This was a Super Bowl ad from a number of years ago. It's called Bob's House. This is, to me, an ad, so that means it's going to be short. But watch it, then we'll see. Let's hope it's still working right. You're saying, oh, check your sound. There is none. Embedded in it's just all of, that's just such a great ad. Now, I don't know if it sells Pepsi at all. This is where those of you that are in those other fields, I don't think it sells any drinks, but I think it's a good ad. And it got some net notice. All right. Oh, I don't know. I know time-wise I'm going to be tight. Have you seen Chance? Okay. Are you animal lovers? Yeah. Okay.
Chance was actually hit by a car and was left on the side of the road.
I apologize. The caption was a little off.
They saved him right before he was going to be euthanized. They gave him a chance. So then that's where they came up with the name Chance.
My husband's like, we have to get him because nobody's gonna love him like we're gonna love him.
I deal with the same struggles that he deals with. Man, he's like my best friend. We do everything together. When he's in a chair and we're running together down the street, he feels free. It's easy for us to relate. Initially with him being in a wheelchair, I just thought that was kind of the coolest thing that they offer that for animals. I knew his struggles as well as mine, and I knew that we could overcome those obstacles together. Chance is extremely active, can't jump like all the other dogs, but I don't hold him back coming. He'll still try to jump on the couch. He'll leap off the back porch into the grass.
Michael always looks on the brighter side of everything. Chance is absolutely the same way. He follows him in whatever he does.
The difference Chance makes in my life is the happiness and the courage to know that there isn't anything anybody can't do.
It's so nice to come home and he's
Looks like
running at you at the door. He's going so fast, his butt sliding into the wall.
A dog that doesn't let anything get him down, it makes you
It makes you appreciate life.
It kind of takes that from me, I guess. It just knows that we have no restrictions and there isn't anything that we can't do.
Okay, it's for Kleenex. I guess maybe that's a program. I don't know if it sells any. You're probably using some, but I don't know if it sells it. But it's pretty cool. And there's a little message in there. I get sometimes I'm a little hypercritical. I mean, I think there are some things that that person can't do, but I think the idea is that there's people underestimate what they can do. And that dog sure seems to be happy. Okay, all right. Okay, well, let's do a couple things here. I may be one of the, I don't know, blindness, that didn't go well. Something about Mary. I'll tell you, she has a brother, I don't know, it's an older film, but she has a brother in there with intellectual disabilities that I don't think is portrayed very well. The Ringer, Special Olympics, the national organization actually kind of was involved and watched it being done. There's good things about it, and there's some things I don't like, so it's on my not like list, but I guess I go back and forth a little bit. Look at the thing on the left, that's children's literature. That's an evil balloon. I have no idea what the storyline is, but I know it's an evil balloon. Why do you have to have an eye patch on it? Because of pirates, I think. Anyway, it just, I don't know. I mean, I think the balloon's evil without the eye patch. Okay, I'll just let it go, okay? The one on the right, I love. Gary Larson, I think, is right, and I think that's the person. He stopped drawing these things. This is a little, he crossed the line on me on this one. Yeah, would you pick that guy up? If that was Millie Rogers, you wouldn't pick her up either, probably. Okay, I'm going to show you an ad that is on the negative side. Now, they took this baby off. There was so much of an outcry, but I think you need to see it. I called it the jumper. I don't think they called it that.
There's no affordable housing? You think I wanted high taxes or global warming? Reality TV? I don't even know my neighbors. 3D ducks for 17,000! I'm coming down. I'm coming down.
Okay, let me just say, I hope maybe none of you in here have close friends or family members who have taken their lives. But if you do, you'll understand that that isn't quite the ad that you might want to have. Volkswagen's had some problems recently and other reasons. This was an ad that did not go well, and actually they did pull it off. There was such an outcry to it. So, there's good, and there's a lot more good. I wanted to show you one that wasn't, but to give you a feel for things, but that's one of them. Oh man. I guess I should show you this one. I'm still trying to figure this one out. I don't know where I am. You'll have to tell me. It's from Britain, so be ready. I don't know what that means.
Programmes challenging our ideas of beauty, starting the 1st of July on BBC 3 TV and online.
I don't know what that's about. But somebody who is a regular watcher of America's Next Top Model, maybe it's something along those lines, but I don't know if you heard the words in there. Did you catch the words? I didn't prep you for it. Challenging our ideas of beauty. What am I challenging? Aren't they beautiful already, maybe? Okay. I don't know where I stand on that one. Okay, got some contemporary applications, and I've got about 15 minutes to do it, so let's see. Oh, well, I already told you these are ones I'm not going to cover. I didn't tell you all of them. What I'm not going to cover, which I think, I did talk about mental illness. I'm really concerned about how mental illness is portrayed in movies and television. Sometimes it's done well. Ordinary People, I think, got it. Not an uplifting film, but they got it. And there's other ones I think that do too, but there's a lot of stuff that bothers me. I already told you about the wounded warrior piece, although that's not a term. That's a contemporary term. We did not use that one a few years ago. That's a more recent kind of terminology. The third bullet there is, it's very interesting to look at some of the mass shootings. You'll know, particularly the one that happened up in the Northeast in the elementary school, San Diego. The shooter had Asperger syndrome, high end of the autism spectrum. I'm very concerned that as media writes about that it comes across as if you have, that there's some kind of dangerous tendency you have if you happen to have at the upper end of the autism spectrum. I'm not covering this well, I'm just saying those are issues that are really fascinating to look at. Freaks and freak shows, I love that one. There's contemporary freak shows, if you didn't know it. And I'm big on creative arts. I'm not going to talk about Sergey. I think that's gotten enough attention in a way. But I think it's notable. It's certainly something that got media attention. Did want to do power of words. All right, so here we go. So here's how I'm going to introduce these things. I'll give you a context, give you a couple things to think about, and then I'll either show you a video or I'll give you some visual examples. So it's really about the use of language and how powerful language can be. So I'm very interested in how language is used, particularly as it's associated with folks with disabilities. And there's at least 3 terms that some of you I know because I know you, but that I'd like for you to leave tonight, kind of be thinking about if you hadn't thought about it before. Okay, so let me show you. Anybody know who Amy Mullins is? Yeah, I knew Allie, you did. Okay. I'm going to introduce Amy Mullins to you through the Kenneth Cole ad. That had some very different individuals in their ads, kind of really interesting kind of campaign. No idea if it sells shoes. But the ads are kind of interesting. That's Amy. Amy Mullins is a para-athlete, world class, supermodel, whatever that is, and then and goes around and does lots of presentations, and a pretty articulate lady. I wanted to introduce you through the ad, which gives me a way of introducing and also maybe talking about the ad a little bit. But what I want to do is show you, she did a TED Talk a couple of years, 2009 I believe it is. And it's just the first part of the TED Talk that I want you to catch, okay? So I'm not going to show it all, I'm just going to show the first part.
With you a discovery that I made a few months ago while writing an article for Italian Wired. I always keep my thesaurus handy whenever I'm writing anything, but I had already finished editing the piece, and I realized that I had never once in my life looked up the word disabled to see what I'd find. Let me read you the entry. Disabled, adjective. Crippled, helpless. Useless, wrecked. Stalled, maimed, wounded, mangled, lame, mutilated, run down, worn out, weakened, impotent, castrated, paralyzed, handicapped, senile, decrepit, laid up, done for, done in, cracked up, counted out. See also hurt, useless, and weak. Antonyms: healthy, strong, capable. I was reading this list out loud to a friend, and at first was laughing. It was so ludicrous. But I had just gotten past mangled, and my voice broke, and I had to stop and collect myself from the emotional shock and impact that the assault from these words unleashed. You know, of course, this is my raggedy old thesaurus, so I'm thinking this must be an ancient print date, right? But in fact, the print date was the early 1980s, when I would have been starting primary school and forming an understanding of myself outside the family unit and as related to the other kids in the world around me. And needless to say, thank God I wasn't using a thesaurus back then. I mean, from this entry, it would seem that I was born into a world that perceived someone like me to have nothing positive whatsoever going for them. When in fact today, I'm celebrated for the opportunities and adventures my life has procured.
I'm going to stop it there. There's a little bit more I usually like to show, but I've got a couple of things I want to do before we're done tonight. The point is that the power of words. I love her when she talks about, I'm glad I didn't look at it when I was in elementary school. If you look at that, if you look at those words, I mean, I work on a regular basis with folks with disabilities. I don't think any of those things is a thing. So I just want to make you aware of the use of words and the power of words, and they really can make a difference. She says it much better than I would have, so that's why I like to show you the clip. Another set of words that's interesting, and this is kind of something I hope maybe you'll start looking at, it's just one of those things, is the whole idea of if someone is in a wheelchair, the proper word to use is that someone uses a wheelchair. There's two terms that we've used historically that really aren't acceptable. Now I'm saying that. I have friends who use wheelchairs. They're probably less bothered by this than I am. I don't know why. I was attacked for leaving it in a book I had left this term in, and a colleague of mine who uses a wheelchair just went at me he said, I'm going to stop using your book. I said, oh, that's how I live. And I said, and he said, listen, you've had 5 editions to get this right. You screwed up. He didn't say it that way, but I screwed up again, left it in. He said he stopped using the book. And I figured, yeah, okay. It meant something to him. So we want to try to stay away from confined to wheelchair bound. When Avatar came out, you remember Avatar? Okay. There's a character in there who uses a wheelchair. When the reviews of that movie came out, it was just unbelievable. Every paper didn't quite get it right, even though the Associated Press guide says you're not supposed to use that. Again, as I said, some people react more to that, maybe me, than others. It's kind of interesting. All right, this brings up the R word. Just to let you know, there's a big campaign beginning of March, so a little less than a month. You'll know, hopefully on campus, you'll see us advertising this. Spread the word to end the word. It's all about trying to get rid of the word retarded. We've tried to get that out of our parlance. My feeling about it is everybody in here has probably used the word. Most of you have just used it because you've heard it. I don't think it's maliciously used by most people, but it's hurtful. If you work with folks who have mental retardation, we don't call it that anymore, we call it intellectual disabilities, those folks that have it, that word is very hurtful. If you know someone who has intellectual disabilities, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you don't, maybe you let it bounce off a little bit more. But I think it's a very important thing to me. Okay, we got to make a decision here. I've got about maybe 5 to 10 minutes left, if you stay for a couple of minutes after. I've got to make this, I'm not going to be able to get all 3. All right, I'm going to do the one on intellectual disabilities and the death penalty. You got a choice. Here's the choice. Do you want to do better dead than disabled, or do you want to do inspirational porn? Now I'm going to do inspirational porn. I just made the decision. Okay. This one is interesting, though. And the reason it's interesting, I'm not gonna do it much, is that, let me just go to the 2 movies. How many of you saw this? Oh, you loved it, didn't you? People in the disabled world hate it. What's it saying? You're better off dead than disabled. I mean, you have to watch the film closely if you haven't seen it. It just raises some really interesting issues. Now, I am one of the last people, I am on board on someone choosing to die. You know, kind of in a certain situation. There's some other more current examples. Let's see. You might have remembered this one from not long ago. I'm actually not doing all of them. Jareka Boland. You know, this is a 14-year-old girl who, my only concern, she chose to have her life end. She had a big prom and stuff like that. If she makes that, she's 14 years old. But if she gets the proper counseling and goes and has a chance to really think through it, I guess that's their choice. I just think that there's this kind of message in the media, you're better off dead than disabled, particularly if you have pretty serious stuff. And then, I don't know how Juliana Snow at 5 years old makes the decision. Okay, I'm just gonna let go. All right, let's do this one, then I'm gonna end up with inspirational porn. I know you're ready for that one. So here's ID. So here's the deal. Well, I've already mentioned to you that we can no longer execute folks with intellectual disabilities, but it's up to the defense team to show that the person has intellectual disabilities if they've committed a capital crime and you're in a state that still has an active death penalty. The state of Texas does. Okay. So my concern is misinterpreted information. So if I asked you what's that image of intellectual disabilities, I think many people think Down syndrome. I've just given you a whole bunch of examples of people I know. This is a kid I just met in Hanoi. No, this was Saigon. But different ones from all over different places. I think that's the image that people sometimes have. I'll get to another image in a second. You know about my death penalty work. This is exactly what happens. These come from court cases. Now, I've been involved with almost 60 different death penalty cases at some level, 40 in some depth. These come up that and I'm using the old term for a reason. You're not retarded if you can do one of those things. Now, I'm going to just submit to you that some of you are going to say, well, yeah, that is true. It's true if you're basing your stereotype of intellectual disabilities on a certain group of individuals. That might be. My friend Brenna, who was in one of the pictures I just showed, she comes into my class. She has Down syndrome. She's 26 years old. She reads. She puts together a PowerPoint presentation. And people are like, whoa, you know, what's going on there? That's not what they're expecting. You know, the idea has friends. Give me a break. But these have been arguments used in cases to disprove that somebody has intellectual disabilities. So here's the thing. There are some folks with ID that have problems here. I'm just saying, we're talking about people in the forensic world, in the criminal justice world, at the top end of intellectual disabilities, and most of them can do that. I can even show you information that shows individuals with intellectual disabilities have gotten GEDs. That's not easy to do. Okay, so that's kind of the problem. These are just, I'm just showing some pictures of what I think people think. And it's going to lead to, and here's some of the films. See, there's nothing wrong. I don't know if you saw I Am Sam. Maybe we shouldn't even talk about Forrest. Or Radio, or some of these other ones. It's not that those images were wrong, those characters, but they were very narrow slices of intellectual disabilities. If that's what you think, you're going to be in trouble if you're trying to understand what intellectual disabilities is. Now let's get to the real one. Of Mice and Men. You all read it, right? Everybody read it, just so you did. Okay. Who's the character I'm heading for? Lenny, okay? All right, there's different depictions of Lenny. There's been a couple films. Does Lenny have intellectual disabilities? Okay. Let's go with yes. He's a fictional character. But yes, he does. Okay, I think if we applied our criteria, he would meet the criteria. In the first couple pages of Mice and Men, his language level is low, he does a lot of imitation, he's a follower, there's memory problems, he needs supports, all that comes out in just the first couple pages of the book. Those are all things I would associate with intellectual disabilities. However, our Court of Criminal Appeals has used Lenny as the standard for intellectual disabilities. Meaning that if you don't look like Lenny or behave like him, you don't qualify as having intellectual disabilities. And I'll just tell you, I mean, I'm giving you my bias, that's just not right. I mean, folks with mild intellectual disabilities are not Lenny. They're much higher functioning. And it's misinformation, I mean, it's misdirected because not that Lenny's not, Lenny isn't the common type of person. He's certainly not, I know he does a bad thing, if you remember the storyline. But the thing is, he's not represented. This is the one where it really hit the wall, or, well, sorry, I didn't use that word, because that's called the walls. There's a guy with an IQ of 61. That is far below the cutoff for intellectual disabilities. And he was executed a few years ago. And there was a big cry. Actually, John Steinbeck's son even said, listen, this is a fictional character. You can't be basing these kinds of decisions on things like that. This is my concern. Do you kind of feel for me that I'm concerned about media images when they really have impact on people? And I'm not just talking about their lives, their life. That's what I'm talking about. What's interesting now, just to let you know, there's a case in Texas, and I will just tell you, I can take a step back. I didn't work either one of these cases, so I'm not involved deeply. I'm aware of them. Bobby Moore is a case in Texas. And believe me, it doesn't matter where you are on the death penalty. I'm just arguing that if you've excluded a certain group, you ought to be able to understand the group properly. That's all I'm saying. This Bobby Moore case has now gone up, and the Supreme Court has agreed to review it. So they will make a decision come probably sometime in June, and it should, in all likelihood, should change the way that our courts work in terms of trying to look at intellectual disabilities. It's a big deal. Okay, let me do this, and I'll do this very fast. This is the problem. Celebrating achievement versus inspiration porn, okay? It's a tough one, but I think it's an interesting one. All right, so we've got people with disabilities that do interesting things. Okay, I forget the guy's name. The guy who's blind that climbed Mount Everest. That's worth noting. Hell, anybody that climbs Mount Everest. Anybody that stays at base camp, I think, gets my attention, okay? I'm just fascinated by anybody that does that. If you've ever climbed at altitude, you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? I think that's noteworthy. But this is where the issue is kind of misdirected. What happens is it gets the focus on the disability, not the person. Let me show you. I love this one. I just found this the other day. 10 disabled people who did the impossible. I'm thinking, oh, geez. I'm not going to show it to you. This is what I'm going to tell you. If you have a chance, watch Stella Young. She did a TED Talk. It's 9 minutes long. It's not terribly long. She will cover this way better than I will. She basically said she's you can't quite tell. She uses a motorized chair. She definitely has physical issues going on, physical challenges. She said that she's been celebrated where she's been, where she lives, for getting up and having breakfast. It's like, oh man, that's so inspiring that you got out of bed. Give me a break. And that's her point, is that, listen, I live a regular life. I mean, maybe celebrate something I did that's pretty amazing, but don't make this a big deal on just everyday kinds of things. It's not something we usually think about, but I think it's worth thinking about. Well, she hates this. She goes, I'm not going to go at it. You watch the TED Talk. Look at that. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Oh, she hates that one. And some of you may have that up in your rooms, so I apologize. But it's kind of interesting to listen to her talk about it. Her point would be, I can have a great attitude, and I go out the door and there's steps and no ramp. That attitude ain't changing anything, okay? Now let me get to this, okay? So this is about the Paralympics. A lot of the Paralympians hate the term inspiration, and they're seen as that. They're seen as that. So I could have gone, so I went to my friend. Some of you may know him. He comes to my class. He's now become a friend of mine. Some of you, Jeff Butler, just a great guy. He went to UT, tried to take my media class, Patty, and couldn't get in. He was on the wait list. I wanted him in so bad, but we have the cutoffs, and you just can't do it. So, but I got to know him. So here's the deal. If you read what he says, is that I just asked him the other day. This is an email he sent me maybe yesterday. I don't think I told him I was going to share it, but okay. I sometimes told I don't think I could ever do what you do. It's so inspiring to see you out, that you got out of the house. Okay. He doesn't use a motorized chair. He's out there all the time. Understand that a wheelchair is a liberating tool for people. It gives them a chance. That's why that confined to a wheelchair is not the image they want. All right, so if you read that, this is the, okay, in spite of the obstacles that face me in my everyday life, and he does have some, I'm able to overcome them and get out of my house. He goes on and he kind of talks a little bit about that. He'll basically say, yeah, people parking. I didn't tell you I used to be a constable for Travis County. I used to write tickets for folks that parked in disabled parking. If you don't know, it's $500. And people would park in his spot. He needs to have certain spots that are close by. And he needs to have a spot that's level. There's a whole bunch of things he needs to have. But he gets by every day. He's very successful. And that's, oh, by the way, a silver medal in the Olympics. This is what I love. He's come to my class. He says, as a rugby team, he plays wheelchair rugby, which is, the other name for it is, do you know what the other name is? Murder ball. That's what they call it, but they've done away with it because sponsors don't like murder ball. Okay. As a rugby team, we get a lot of press when we, it says travel to other cities for tournaments. There will usually be news crews around and maybe a print reporter or two. Several of us will be interviewed, and then we make bets on what section of the news our interview will be in. 9 out of 10 times, we will be put into the human interest part of the paper. Where should this story be? It should be in sports. 1 out of 10 times it'll be in sports. It kind of gives you a sense, oh man, it's so amazing that you play wheelchair rugby. It is a pretty interesting sport. I'm not playing it, but you get the idea. Okay, my time is up, so let me end with this slide. And then if there's something I've touched on, I know there's so many things I wish I could spend a little more time with you, because there's a couple other topics I'd like to do. I don't know if you know who Frank Layden is. Some of us have been around for a while know that he was actually the coach for the Utah Jazz. He became president of the Utah Jazz. So he was having trouble with one of his players. So he brings the player in to his office. And here's how it goes. It starts off and he says, I told him, son, what is it with you? Is it ignorance or apathy? Player turns to the coach and he says, Coach, I don't know and I don't care. Yeah, do the translation there, okay? Here's the thing. I don't know why you can't, only because you have to. But the idea is that I'm glad you were here with me for a few minutes here tonight. I do hope that, hopefully I've been able to give you a little bit of know, if you didn't know it already, some things to think about, maybe to go out. I've tried to do 28 weeks in kind of 1 hour, so it's a little tough, but I was thrilled to have the opportunity to do it. I do hope that you care in whatever way that is. The reason I like the class I do and have been supported so well by undergraduate studies is that in my class, even though you'd think I'd attract folks from my field of special ed, it's people from all over I love people from other majors, engineers, pre-med. I love having everybody with different backgrounds, and that's what makes it kind of cool, because you all can go out and make a difference. And now, we make a difference in a lot of ways, but this is one way, and I hope that there's some things I've left you, or introduced to you, that linger as you go on tonight and elsewhere. So, thanks for coming, I appreciate it. Thanks for undergraduate.